How you see things will determine how you feel about them. Our negative stories constrict us. What if I told you that the biggest roadblock in your relationship is not your partner, but your story about your partner? And by the way, let's not forget their story about you. Hi, I'm Terry Real, the founder of Relational Life Therapy, and I want to give you a very specific tool today, which is to hold your story lightly. Don't get carried away. In RLT, Relational Life Therapy, we tell people to use the phrase, what I make up is. It's a beautiful phrase. What I make up is. The story I tell myself is. That my narrative, my fantasy, my construction. We take ownership of our own process. Were you rude? I don't know. I told myself a story that you were rude. I have a narrative about you that you can be rude. Is it objectively true? Are you, in fact, rude? I don't know. That's called humility. When you own what your story is, you stay on your side of the line. You're clean. What I make up is that. Terry, you said you'd be home for dinner with me and the kids. You came in almost an hour late. You didn't call. You didn't text. What I make up is you got sort of overwhelmed with some project or work, and you spaced it. You completely forgot. And that's a kind of a selfishness that is in you that I really would love for you to work on, because I'm sitting here with the kids and we're waiting for you to show up for dinner, and it's not nice. I make up that you can be self-involved and selfish. That phrase is golden. Don't say that phrase, and I have now walked over to your side of the street, and I'm telling you about you. In a 12-step, they would say, I'm taking your inventory, and it's intrusive. Who the hell am I to tell you about you without your permission? So the beauty of owning your construction is I'm not telling you about you. I'm not arguing. I'm telling you about me. This is what I make up about you. And the beauty is when you move from inhabiting the quote unquote objective voice, this is who you really are, to the subjective voice, you move into humility. And the great trick in that, don't tell anybody, is no one can argue with you. If you are claiming objective reality, you got your neck out to the street and back. You're cruising for an argument. You're rude. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Well, and then you start marshaling your troops, arguing your evidence, you're before the judge. Well, here's why you're rude. Sally thinks you're rude too. No. You watch people do this all day long. I experienced you as being rude. Shoot me. Maybe I'm overly sensitive. I don't know, but that's how it felt to me. That's the story I tell myself. Whew. What a relief. So this gets you out of the bind of, on the one hand, let me tell you what's wrong with you and what your character looks like and the work you need to do, all of which is presumptuous and intrusive. Who are you to be telling me all that, even if you live with me? But on the other hand, if I don't tell you all of that, you're going to keep behaving rudely with me or whatever the issue is. So I don't want to just be silent and collude. Okay, great. There's a middle ground. This is what I make up about you. Right or wrong, always a great phrase to throw in because it's subjective. Right or wrong, this is how I experienced it. But I wasn't rude. Maybe you weren't. But when you called me that nasty name and looked at me that way, I felt put down. What can I say? So there's no arguing, and you don't argue. I do a lot of shrugging in my therapy and in my marriage. I don't know, maybe. You don't have to fight with anybody. The second thing is that if you take responsibility for your story, the next step is taking responsibility for your feelings. Short of abuse, if I walk over and hit you over the head with a brick, I have some responsibility for the pain that I've caused, of course. But short of boundary violating abuse, here's the radical idea. Every person is responsible for their own feelings. What I do is the occasion, the trigger. What you choose to feel about what I just did is completely up to you. You feel this way. The person next to you can feel quite differently. The person next to you can feel differently still. Yes, I was 10 minutes late. I take responsibility for that. I was 10 minutes late, and person A is furious. Person B is anxious. Person C is on their phone using the time to catch up on email and doesn't give a damn. Person E is 10 minutes later than I am. On and on and on and on. I am not responsible for your feelings. I am responsible for my behaviors. And you can be compassionate and still have boundaries. I can understand sitting here waiting for me for 10 minutes how you might feel ... Fine. But that falls short of, oh, I feel guilty because I made you feel bad. I did not make you feel bad. And in fact, if you really want an A plus, PM Melody taught us this, you replace the word. In RLT, we ask you to outlaw the phrase makes me. That's victim talk. I'm not responsible, you made me. No, that's bad boundaries. I didn't like it. I told myself a story that I wasn't valuable to you. Oh, I'm sorry, honey. But when you were late, I felt terrible and you're responsible for my bad feelings. No, you're not. Outlaw the word makes me. You make me. There's blame. And I made you is also blame. You know, in our culture, if you say to me, you made me feel bad, it's clear that that's blame. But if I say, oh, I feel guilty that I made you feel bad, we think that's moral. No, it's still blame. I was late and you felt bad. I can understand, but you cut causality. You felt bad because you told yourself a story that I was late because you don't mean that much to me. You're not that worth it to me. And then you escalated into feelings of unworthiness in general. So once we start realizing I'm responsible for my feelings because the story I tell myself will determine how I feel. The technical phrase is affect follows cognition. What I tell myself will kick out the emotions. That's why I'm responsible for my own emotions. Wednesday, I'm walking out the door and Belinda says, have a nice day, dear. And the story I tell myself is she's being warm and cozy and I feel nice and give her a kiss. Wednesday night, we have a big fight. And Thursday morning, I'm walking out the door. She goes, have a nice day, dear. I tell myself that she's being sarcastic and I have a very different set of feelings. How you see things will determine how you feel about them. And in RLT, we take responsibility for that process. This is how I am making myself feel. That's how we use the feedback, which we'll cover in another tape. And, you know, my kids, 2 boys, 34, 37, to this day, they do great comedy on being raised by 2 therapists, but they've been listening. And to this day, my 37-year-old will say, Dad, I called you 2 days ago and you're just getting back to me now. I got myself feeling lonely and uncared about that you didn't call. Oh, I'm sorry, Alexander. I got myself. Who sounds like that? Well, you do, now that you've been trained. This is how I feel. This is what happened. This is how I interpreted it. And given that interpretation, these are the feelings I felt about it. The beauty of owning it is you stop walking around blaming everybody. You're not a big victim. It cuts your control. It's not up for you to make me feel better, just like it wasn't up to you to make me feel bad. I'm responsible. And when you really get good at it, I want you to start to hold your negative stories about other people with a grain of salt. Do I really want to believe that? And do I really want to believe it for my sake? In RLT, we teach couples to what we call scan for the positive. Most couples scan for the negative, for what's not going right, for what they disagree with. No, as an act of discipline, scan for the positive, scan for what you do like, scan for what you can agree to. Lead with that. And if you're paying attention to the new research in positive psychology, what makes people happy, if you begin to give yourself the practice of scanning for the positive instead of the negative, of taking your negative stories about people with a grain of salt. Yeah, okay, well, that's them at their worst, but hey, look, they also have this. And you begin to interact with positive and take a little bit of distance from all that negativity for your sake. You might be surprised at how people respond. It's not always true. Sometimes you have to stand up forcefully to negative breeds negative, and positive quite often breeds positive. Take your negative stories about yourself and those around you with a big grain of salt. Okay, that's their character flaw. That may be the worst of them. Let me see what I can do to interact with the best of them, including the best of me. We're all imperfect. We're all bozos on this bus. There's a lot of negative things that we can focus on. They may be true, they may be not. Take a breath and see if you can change your story. One of my favorite quotes is the poet Goethe. If you treat someone as they are, they will be as they are. If you treat them as they ought to be, they may become who they ought to be. Our negative stories constrict us. See if you can move beyond them. Thank you. If you found this helpful, hit the button to subscribe to this channel. It's been a joy to be with you. Take care.